Jenny Larios is running tech for us today. Thank you so much, Jenny. As I said, we are recording the session, so Alice will share with the follow-up email the recording later this week. If you are uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and then just private message Jenny with your name for our attendance. I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sauna people. Our ongoing colonial presence on Indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat in just a minute about land acknowledgements and about those people groups. And I'd like to go ahead and welcome our speakers today, Gary and Kathleen. Happy that you could join us today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for having us. It's great to be here today to talk about such an important topic. So my name is Kathleen McHenry. I am a senior policy analyst with the Texas Workforce Commission's Child Care Policy team. And with me is Gary Romano. Gary, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Absolutely. Gary Romano, President and CEO of Civitas Strategies Early Start. We work with TWC in helping to implement the business coaching that will be referenced today. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, Gary and his team are very integral partners with us on our business coaching, and he and their team knows a lot about the Child Care Relief Fund. So without further ado, let me find the share my screen button here and start presenting. All right, can you all see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. So today we are going to walk you through hopefully what is now a reminder for many of you of the eligible expenses for the Child Care Relief Fund. We'll talk a little bit about the program and give you some reminders about some requirements and the different spending opportunities that you have if you've received the Child Care Relief Fund. I'll give you a reminder of the reporting requirements as well. I know most of you, if you've received your first payment, then you've likely already completed your quarterly reporting form, but we'll go through that a little bit as well. And then with Gary's help, we will talk about some specific ways that you can use your relief fund to support outdoor learning environments, as well as your physical space if you have an indoor environment as well. And then we'll open it up for some Q&A at the very end. So to hop right into the Child Care Relief Fund, this year we received almost 11,000 applications, which was more than we did in the first round of the relief fund. And we have processed most of those. So about 10,600 applications were approved and processed, which is really exciting. And you can see at the bottom there on the bottom right how much funding we have dedicated towards the relief fund this year, about $2.95 billion, which is a huge amount and really exciting, and just shows how much opportunity each of you have to spend your relief fund on some of the things that are most important to you in your business. And then a quick reminder on how the funds for 2022 are split across four quarterly payments. So as you probably are aware, you'll receive your total award across 4 equal payments. And in between each payment, you will have to report on how you spent your previously received funds, or at least a portion of those funds. So you don't need to report on how you spent the entire amount. You can, for example, save up to, renovate your playground or replace a fence. And if that's a cost that exceeds one of your first checks, then you can save a little bit and spend that all later on and report later on. And then at the end of the Child Care Relief Fund in 2023, we will require a final report, ending how you spent your entire award amount. And then,
Catherine?
oh yes, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry to interrupt. I noticed there was a comment in the
Oh, yes,
side.
I
Yeah,
see
so I
the
think you
chat.
just need to hit presentation mode in the lower right
Oh,
of the, yeah, okay, lower, yeah, lower right. And then we'll have that little thing that looks like a I think it almost looks like a little easel with a screen on it, right near the Zoom on the lower right.
right near the
Okay.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in
close.
presenting mode. Can you not see my, what can you see?
We can see
So we can see
slides like
just the
you're editing.
first slide. Yeah.
Oh,
So the other way to do it, I think, is under view.
okay, let me stop sharing then. So you're just seeing like small slides basically?
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't
Okay.
like going through with you. So
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Thanks for interrupting me. Okay, let's see here. Is it bigger now? Oh wait, is it bigger now?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So did you miss all my slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Well, we will go back then. Hopefully, okay, here's where we were. It was just a quick visual of the payment process and the quarterly reporting, and how in between each payment you will have to report on your uses of funds. And then wanted to, before we detail some specific expenses that could be used for outdoor learning environments, wanted to remind you of all the allowable expenses for the Child Care Relief Fund, which are listed here on the screen. You can now see, which is good. So this one-time opportunity, this one-time program is available to cover expenses that are necessary for your program's operations, and can date back to September of 2021, so last year, and can go through May 31st, 2023. So we really encouraged over time programs to allocate their relief fund on some of their more major and reoccurring expenses. Examples of that would be your payroll and personnel costs. Those are easy to document. You have them every month, and they are, of course, a major part of your monthly budget. So that's a great option for you if you're looking for ways to easily expend your award. That's a great option. Same as rent, mortgage, and utilities, another major expense for programs, reoccurring, very easy to document. So again, that's another great option. But there are other general expenses here, minor facilities maintenance, supplies, cleaning, equipment, and then another great one here, mental health of children and your employees, a great option. And then other necessary goods and services, which is kind of a big bucket that we'll kind of explain a little bit more when we get into some outdoor learning environments, but can include things like curriculum and really anything that's necessary for your business to continue operating. Keep in mind a couple of things that you did agree to when you applied for the relief fund. There were a couple of federal requirements and then a state requirement. So those first three on the list are federal. They require you to implement policies in line with CDC guidance. This is because when the legislation was passed that created this funding opportunity, we were in the height of COVID-19, and the legislators really wanted to make sure that programs were staying safe and keeping in mind guidance from the CDC. So this one isn't particularly as impactful at the moment, but also, you still need to comply with it whenever it makes sense with that requirement. And then also to pay at least the same amount in weekly wages and maintain the same level of benefits for your staff, and then not furlough any of your employees through the duration of the award, so through May of 2023. And then provide relief from co-payments and tuition payments for families enrolled in your program to the extent possible. That to the extent possible at the beginning there, that's really important. It's essentially a requirement that you consider helping your families with tuition, but not a requirement that you do so. And then
we have a quick question in the chat asking if this is the funds that they received in February and relates to the funds they received in February.
These were not received in February. Programs generally started receiving funding in March. The application opened in March. So around that time, but I'm not sure if there maybe was another funding source you received in February. But earlier this year, the relief funds began, and those quarterly payments are continuing through early 2023.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then that last one on your screen is a state requirement that programs remain open until May of 2023. And I've mentioned reporting and monitoring a couple of times. So just to bring this back and make it really clear, quarterly reports are required for providers who've applied for the program in order for them to continue receiving funding. So you'll have to fill out your report before you can get your next check. And then that final report will be required in 2023. The reporting form, as most of you have probably seen, is pretty simple. It doesn't ask you to upload your receipts or any documentation. It just asks how much of your previously received funds you have spent in each spending category. So we'll just ask you to report a whole number of funds in each category. And then it will ask you if you supported families through the tuition assistance policy during that quarter. Asks a yes or no on that, and then also asks to detail how the funds supported the program in the past quarter. That said, it is really important and also actually required that you keep your receipts because if you're selected for monitoring, you will have to comply with the requests of the monitoring department, which include providing supporting documentation of how you spent your funds. So for that reason, it's important that you have a good record keeping process in place and have all the receipts for your uses of funds. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Gary so that he can explain and go into a little bit more detail about how the relief funds can support outdoor learning environments.
Excellent, great, thanks, Kathleen. So, you know, this is an incredible opportunity to enhance a lot of those outdoor areas that you're all focused on in a variety of different ways. And, you know, as you can see, and we're going to go through these in a little bit more detail, there's a lot of different options, right? So, you know, definitely the glass is more than half full when it comes to opportunities to use these funds. For example, shade areas for outdoor lessons and play, upgraded water, sand, or interactive play areas, fencing, flooring, rubber surfacing, pavement repair, right? These are all areas that are covered, new toys, tricycle, balance bikes, any of those things that you could be moving around, you know, outside, those are likely covered. I mean, I can't really think of a permutation where it isn't. Children's garden or other natural play spaces, right? And I know that, you know, looking at the network's work, you know, this is a key part of what you're doing, are these natural features that become part of the play area. And they would also be things that you can invest in through the program, as well as other materials for education, creative arts, STEM, general learning. Those things are outside that you're doing. I mean, typically, you know, the thing to think about where it becomes a limit is when you're permanently affixing something, right? Like if you had a play structure, now you're sinking concrete and all of those things, of course, an exception being fencing and some of the other items. But that's like the biggest limit when it comes to outdoor space. And we've seen a lot of providers really avail themselves of these funds when it comes to their outdoor play spaces, because it gives them a chance to really spend this money in a way that they normally don't have to really change that and often update and modernize it. And, you know, there are also some other things that you should be thinking about, right? You know, in the building or facility that you're in, the quality of your program, health and safety. So this can be portable sinks, touchless faucets, soap dispensers, right? You know, yes, you know, thankfully, and knock on wood, COVID is waning in many ways, but you know, there's a culture of hygiene that has really, you know, taken on, which is wonderful. As we all know, when you're around young children, the more you can get them to wash their hands, the better. This is a great time to update some of those features, right? As well as, you know, some of the cleaning supplies that you have, the toys, some of the common area supports that you have, heating and cooling systems, key part of this, right? And it's a wonderful time to update it, maybe get ahead of your maintenance and, you know, your upgrade around those systems, because we know they're eventually going to go. And as you know far better than I do in Texas, you know, when that cooling system goes, it's going to be an urgency. So we are seeing a lot of providers who are trying to get ahead of it using these funds. Tables, chairs, individual student desks, you know, the young children you're working with for anything like my boys, they're always in need of repair and replacement. And then of course, laundry, refrigerator, freezer, some of those appliances. And again, very often people don't think of them. And we know with the business model that's out there, it's hard to get ahead of those costs. So this provides a great opportunity to say, okay, maybe I could go another year with it, or I could replace it now and make sure I get another 5-6 years before I need to replace it again. Certainly water and air quality, drop off, pickup, security, technology, these are all key things as well. And again, you know, this is something we're talking about with the physical upgrades, but again, that technology, for example, as you know, can also relate to the outdoor experience as well.
Sorry,
So
trying to go ahead.
Oh, do you want me to take?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, number of different tools, right, that you can, and resources that we're going to share. One is spending tips and tools, right? And these are, and we're going to share the website with you, so don't feel like you have to write it down really quickly, but almost everything we're talking about is on childcare.texas.gov. Very simple to remember. This particular relief fund guide tells you how to strengthen and revitalize your business, right? And these are using these funds. So this could be through staff bonuses and compensation, equipment upgrades, toys and supplies, the things that we've been talking about, generating some of those ideas and knowing that they are allowable within these funds, you know, both by the state requirements and more importantly, the federal requirements that are coming down and really shaping the way they have to be used. And again, you know, this is, it seems like it's the same slide. I think it just,
I just wanted to mention real quick that we
yeah.
also have, I don't know how many family childcare providers are here in the audience, but some of these resources we have specifically tailored towards family childcare providers. So we have some ideas for how you might be able to spend your CCRF that are slightly, you know, different than if you were a center-based program.
And again, you know, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
no, go ahead.
No, you go. I'm going to.
We haven't done this in a while, as you can tell. We've got a ton of other resources on the childcare.texas.gov webpage. As Gary mentioned, a couple of them listed here. But if you're interested in learning more about the monitoring process, or if you get selected for monitoring or want to prepare in case you are, there's a guide for that. If you're interested in thinking about how to create a tuition assistance policy for your families, if that's something that you want to look at or take a deeper dive in, there's a great tool on that. And then we have a great kind of decision tree tool, if you will, on how to support your workforce. If you're trying really hard to recruit and retain those high quality staff, and I'm sure many of you are having troubles, filling some open positions and keeping your teachers. So if that's something you're interested in learning more about, all the different options to give your staff bonuses or support them ways, that's a great tool as well. And then I also wanted to mention our technical assistance team. In addition to our great business coaching team, which we'll get to here in a second, we have a technical assistance team that's ready to help you if you have some specific issues at all with the application portal. So that's where you'll be, filling out your quarterly reporting forms. If you have issues receiving your check, if it's missing in the mail, anything like that, please reach out to our technical assistance team and they'll be able to help you. They speak several different languages, so hopefully you'll be able to call in your preferred language and get assistance in that language. Their email and phone number are there on the screen, and then you could actually chat with one of the agents on that website. We keep mentioning childcare.texas.gov. And then Gary, do you want to talk about our business coaches?
Yeah, and even more support, right? So there's we do have the Texas Childcare Business Coaching Team, as we mentioned, which is a partnership that TWC has forged with Avance, Carantis Group, and Civitas Strategies Early Start. And we all have coaches who can guide you through other topics and resources based on your specific strengths, challenges, and opportunities for growth. And this is a rare opportunity, and I should say this is, of course, all for free. That's being provided, and so this is a great deal of support that you can access free of charge. And of course, you can also talk to the coaches about your CCRF funding strategies. So if you're not sure, if you say, gosh, I'm not 100% clear, or worst case, and we do get some people who say, I'm not sure how I can spend it all. We'd love to talk to you. I mean, this is a unique opportunity. The state wants you to invest these funds in Texas's children. I know you do too. And so there is no shame, there's no hesitation that you should have in reaching out to get a business coach to help you with that, make some of those determinations on how to best spend your funds and make sure it's in alignment with the requirements. We've done this a number of times where we've had people come to us and say they couldn't figure it out, and then we've been able to help them and make sure that it benefits your organization and the children and families you serve. And again, childcare.texas.gov is where you go to sign up.
Yes, and I will say the coaching is extremely popular among those who've participated. We've had over 1,700 providers across the state benefit from coaching, and so we're heading into our second year, and we're really excited about what the second year of coaching will bring. So really encourage you to sign up if you're interested at all about ways to grow and sustain your business. It's a really great opportunity. Okay, so we would love to open it up for questions now. I did want to just before we open it up to questions, want to encourage everyone to ask more generalized questions. So instead of asking a question along the lines of, can I buy a, XYZ, anything for your program? Can I upgrade my fence for my program? Can I buy 7 trash cans for the outside of my program? Can I hire a cleaning person for my program? Instead of asking those really specific questions, if we can try to have questions be more general in the sense that it might apply to anyone on the call. That way, we're answering questions that could really relate to anyone's circumstance instead of maybe just your own personalized circumstance. I think that might be helpful for the whole group. So if that's all right with everyone, then I'd like to open it up and see if we have any questions.
We have our first question from Melody. She asks, can centers still apply?
No, unfortunately, the application period for the relief fund closed in May. So unfortunately, the application period is over. I will say, if you were not in operation at the time of the relief fund invitations, and that's why you weren't why you didn't apply is because you didn't have your license at that point. We do have a new program called the Child Care Provider Expansion Initiative, which Gary's team is actually also helping us lead, and that might be something that you might be able to look into and potentially benefit from. There's some, it's not available to everyone across the state. There's some more specific eligibility criteria, but we can pop a link to that in the chat in case that applies to you. Not sure if you want to. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that dovetails nicely with Nelda's question about a new facility, right? So, you know, if you're building that new center and you're moving and you've already been approved for the funds, you know, chances are very likely they're going to be portable with you, but also that could provide a great opportunity to take a look at the expansion grant, because it does depend on a number of different, or I shouldn't say, it doesn't depend on a number of different factors. Let me turn that around. There's a number of different opportunities in which you can be eligible. And it's really exciting. I mean, this is not something other states are doing, and not in this way. So Nelda and other folks who are in that situation, if you're a family care provider and you're expanding in some way, if you're a family care provider becoming a center, if you're a center that's expanding in some way, whether it's a new facility or within your facility, take a close look at that, because this is another way to supplement it, and you could use it in similar ways and really power up your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I should have also mentioned, especially given the topic of this conversation, that these funds are not allowed for major renovations or purchases of facilities. So think about, you know, construction, anything that you're constructing or changing the physical kind of capacity of the building, though that's not an allowable expense of the Child Care Relief Fund or the expansion initiative. You know, these funds wouldn't necessarily, excuse me, go to that new building, but what it could go towards are, you know, your other major expenses, which then you could save money and have more funding for your new building. So covering the salaries for all of your staff for 4 months might free up enough money to help you with that building, for instance. And then of course, supplies and, you know, as Gary detailed, different, you know, things that you might need for your program that you're buying new, those could be eligible. And then
Catherine's, oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, keep going.
No, I just say, as Catherine's pointing out, you know, there's a variety of ways to do it. And sometimes providers will look at it and it's like, you know, you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And, you know, you may be thinking about that facility or physical change that isn't eligible. So you sometimes don't see past it. And, you know, two thoughts on that. One is exactly what Catherine said. There's other things that you could use it on. Now you take that budget money and you move it over to something that may not be eligible for the grant, right? But you freed it up because you did use it on something that's eligible. And the second thing is those business coaches, remember that you have that resource that they can sit down, they could talk you through it. You know, we have sat down with many a provider who's just like you, who said, I can't figure out how to use this. And you know, I'm glad to say there's only one I know of where we couldn't do it, and they received substantial Head Start funds. So those unfortunately couldn't work, but everyone else we've gotten through. And again, that's not, you know, this is TWC wants you to use the money, you know, so definitely you're encouraged to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I see the next, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was just gonna read out the next question.
Oh yeah.
Our next one from Sonia is, what is the time frame to report the use of funds after receiving them?
That's a really good question. So there are a couple of sort of different answers. You are required to report how you spent at least some of your funding no later than 3 months after you received it, if you want to continue getting your next check on time. So the trigger for TWC, so payments are scheduled 3 months apart from each other. So your first payment, let's say it went out in March, your second one hopefully went out in June. The trigger for TWC to send your second payment in June was filling out your quarterly reporting form. I think I mentioned that you don't have to fill it out completely. So we are just looking for at least $1 in reported spending. So let's, you know, say you need to replace your fence and that costs more than your first check that you received. And you're saving up, waiting for your second check to come so that you can pay for that all at once. The trigger for us to send your second payment is just that you've logged in and you've reported at least $1 of spending. So you can buy a book, or you can record maybe one of your bills was paid through the relief fund. So again, it's that 3 months is really that what we think of as a deadline for you to report some spending. You can go back and edit your quarterly report to reflect additional spending later on. And then that final report will be due at the end of June in 2023. So that will kind of reconcile your total spending. So again, kind of going back to that first, my example that I gave, if you paid $150 in bills for the first quarter, at the very end in 2023, we'll want to know how you spent the rest of that quarter's payment, if that makes sense. So just think about it. Every 3 months, you need to log in and report on your use of funds, if not earlier. So potentially, you might want to set up a reoccurring reminder, a week or so ahead of that 3-month deadline to make sure to remind yourself that you've logged in and completed it. We will also send you an automated message if we see that you haven't completed your form and your payment is about to be scheduled. Then we'll send you a reminder email to make sure that you log in so that your payment isn't delayed.
And it's important to keep in mind that, what TWC wants, and they've been very open about this, is they want this money to be spent appropriately for the children of Texas. And so there's no gotcha here. This isn't like the classic TV IRS kind of like, we're going to come in and take all the money away. Nobody wants the money back. They want it to be used appropriately. And I know you do too. And so all of this reporting, the monitoring and everything is really not about a gotcha, but it's really about how together can the state and providers make sure it's used in a way that everyone will feel good going back up to the federal government. So I just want to make sure people know this is not, some sort of repressive thing. It's a partnership.
Yeah.
And Jolene, does it have to be a van? I'm having trouble finding a good van. So transportation, and I was answering this in the chat. Yes, right. What I would say, and I always just say this just in case, if there's personal use and business use, you should follow the same rules you would use for the IRS, right? And if it's 100%, you of course don't have to worry about it, right? Like if you're a center and you have that van that's used, it does not have to be a van. It does have to be a business use vehicle, right? So if, for whatever reason, a large SUV made sense for your business use, but again, it does have to be a business use vehicle. It can't be for personal use. And if it is something that you're shared use, that's a shared use, you do have to divide it up in an appropriate way.
We have a question from Jolene that I think might apply to that other grant you were talking about, is can we use this money as a down payment to purchase a new location?
Yeah, and that one, and I also put that in the chat just in case it got lost there. So I would go back to what Kathleen had said, right? You can't use it for the down payment on the new location, but can you use it for rent or other payments associated with your current location? Absolutely. Can you use it for personnel? Absolutely, right? And that money that you had in your budget for those existing costs, can that be used? Sure, that's your business, right? That's no longer an issue with the state, but they want to make sure that's being used in those appropriate categories. So no to that category, but gosh, look at all the other ones you have here that you can spend it on. And by the way, you wouldn't be the first provider in that situation. So I don't want to make it sound like you're the only one in the world that we've had this conversation with.
Yeah, we get those questions a lot.
Absolutely. Join, no, there's, okay.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions, but if anyone has more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to take the opportunity to put our evaluation in the chat. So if y'all wouldn't mind, as you all know, as teachers, we're always looking for evaluation. And so if you wouldn't mind filling out our eval, that really helps us not only look at what we've done, but also think about what we're going to do next. And now we have another question. Would a big playground set be eligible?
Likely yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen, go ahead.
No, yeah, that's what yeah, likely yes.
I'm fully caffeinated. Yeah.
Yeah, likely yes. About a big playground set, that's something that's necessary for your business. It's, and especially if you have a playground set and you're replacing it, that would definitely be something that would be eligible. And I know, we've had questions, for example, can I replace, my monitor came out and said I should probably think about replacing this. And so that's absolutely a circumstance where this would definitely count. But yeah, playground equipment is something that we've encouraged providers to think about.
And it's always good, again, just to underline it. If you're not 100% sure, talk to a coach about it. And I say that because you'll hear Kathleen and I say, like, likely, because sometimes we do have things like, there was one call I had where a provider was talking about an awning for shade. And as we talked about it, well, it turns out that they were bumping out the building. That would, yes, it would create shade, but now we're into something creating that building that really isn't allowable. And so that would have, it's not what the provider wanted, not what we wanted. So we, of course, then talked about other things. So don't hesitate. As Kathleen said, some of the very specific stuff, the coaches are free. Mm-hmm. You can avail yourselves of them and you can talk through every single piece about your specific needs. Plus, by the way, you're now able to write that down in your notes. And it wasn't like, I guessed it was eligible, but I talked to Gary, he talked me through it, and I was told this is why it's eligible, or it wasn't, and then we found 8 other things that were.
We have another question from TL. What are the possible IRS tax implications? This may be a business coach question.
Yeah, so I'll say that the relief funds are taxable, so it's income that you'll have to report when you do your taxes. But if you are interested in kind of learning more about what that might mean, Gary and his team, the coaches, are actually really great resources. I know we sound like a broken record, but it's true. They've helped so many providers realize a ton of money in savings, potential savings on their taxes. So if that's something that you want to learn more about, I definitely recommend reaching out to the coaches. And Gary, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what you see.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 responses. One is, as Kathleen said, the income is taxable. However, remember, you get to keep the deduction, right? And I know we've had through the stimulus, like, don't talk to me about the PPP at the federal level, at the state level, and all the permutations. I can talk through them, but it's not much fun. But do remember, it's like any other reimbursement. You get to keep both, which does help, right? So it's not like one of them goes away. The other thing I would think about is, and we do have a piece on this on childcare.texas.gov, that talks about the tax implications of all the different stimulus funds. And we show you mathematically that even if this were to, if you're a sole proprietor and this pushes you up a tax bracket, you're still ending up ahead. So don't get nervous about that. The third thing to reinforce what Kathleen said is we can talk to you about this. We can also do a general piece on tax education specifically for your organization and come up with ways that are based on research that we've done on other provider tax returns on, ways for you to be able to save money on this, but also on your general operations or additional audit risks that may be out there. And that goes from sole proprietors on up. So even if you're just, not just, but if you're a sole proprietor and it's just you, we can help you on up. So it doesn't have to be a complex organization for that.
Gary, are the business coaches something that's available just for these funds, or is it available overall for folks that are part of the workforce program?
It is available for overall for the workforce programs. And to be clear, we're emphasizing this particular facet of the work, but it covers a variety of things, right? So there's a whole system around the coaching. So if you do just want to talk to us about one thing, that's absolutely okay. I don't want to discourage anyone if you just want to talk about CCRF funds and nothing else. But if you want to build the resiliency of your organization, if you really want to say, look, all this damage that happened to us from COVID, we want to repair it. That's what the business coaches do. And this is a goal-based coaching approach. So the dosage depends on your time, your availability, and your needs, right? This isn't like you have to make a 12-month commitment to TWC and to show up every week or something like that. This is much more paced around your individual needs and built around it. And that's what's happening on one level. And the other level, as we alluded to earlier, we have more specialized support. So we can do as needed support on, as Kathleen mentioned, tax education, HR issues. We have people every day who are having HR issues who will call us and say, I need somebody to talk to. I have no one else to talk to, and I don't know what to do about this very specific, unusual employee situation. We can talk to you about incorporation, right? If you are incorporated, how to maximize it. If you're not, right? We could talk to you about very specific recruiting issues and retention issues. And I know that's a big one that you're all facing. So do know there's multiple levels to this. Yes, there's the help on how you spend efficiently and effectively that you can get from those coaches. But then there's also this building of your resiliency in a workmanlike manner. And then on top of it, a Swiss Army knife of business supports that you could use as needed. So definitely check out the website. Again, states are not doing this. And I'm not just saying that to suck up to Kathleen. Like, we're working in multiple states and they're really not doing it in the way that Texas is. This is a huge boon. I mean, one of the things for those of you who are family care providers, recently we were entrusted with Tom Copeland's legacy in doing his site. We get about 30 to 40 emails a week from providers all over the country, and they don't have supports like this. They have no one to turn to. You got them here. It's all for free. So something to think about. And I should also say, because I always pitch them, we can also help you with the employee retention tax credit, families first tax credit. So those historical tax credits that you can still avail yourselves of, so you can get more money for that recovery. We can help you with those free of charge. So know that that's out there.
And just to clarify, any provider who's licensed or registered is eligible. They don't have to, you didn't have to apply for or receive the relief funds. You could be a new provider. As long as you have a license number, you're eligible. You don't have to participate in the subsidy program. So it's really, anyone, like I said, who has a license can participate in the program.
Wonderful. We're waiting for another question to come in. And while we wait, I'm going to take a moment again to make an announcement. Our next webinar is Literacy in the Garden, Creating an Engaging Story Walk. So I know that for early childcare centers, getting kids outside and then also getting kids exposed to reading is really key and important. And so I highly recommend that webinar. I put the link in the chat. So I'm not seeing any others. I'm gonna wait just a minute.
Can I come back for that one, Sarah?
Yeah.
I love story walks. I think they're like the greatest thing, and you can, do them in very large spaces. Like they're very prevalent here where I am, and you can see them in large spaces or even really small ones. And it's just such a lovely way to introduce literacy and an outdoor activity.
Yeah, every time I see one, I always stop and read them, even as an adult. They're always just beautiful and exciting.
I do too.
And we'll talk about this in the webinar, but don't feel like they need to be super highly produced either. I have seen fantastic ones on recycled political yard signs. And so there are lots of options. Well, I am not seeing any more questions come in. Thank you so much, Gary and Kathleen. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing. We, as I said, we recorded today's session, and Alice will be sending out the recording. And so please feel free to share that with anyone else at your centers who maybe weren't able to make it today, or you have been sitting here. We always have that instance of, who should have been here? This person. And so please feel free to share that out with them. So Sonia, when you get the recording as a follow-up, you'll need to email Alice back to let her know that you would like a certificate, and we'll get you one. We have one more question come through. When it says personal use, how much of personal can be used as personal?
So I'm not sure, Jolene, if you mean, personnel as in wages and salaries, and of course the business use can be for that. If it's personal versus business use, that may be going back to the reference I made earlier about vehicles and other shared things. So, anytime that you, as you may know, that you have a shared business and personal use of something, you do have to allocate and divide up the costs. And so the business use, the business portion of that would be eligible for the grant. Unfortunately, the personal use isn't. So like the classic example for those home-based providers is you do that time-space calculation that we all know so well of your house. And if, let's say, 30% of it is business use and 70% isn't, well, then you can use the grant towards, or the funding, excuse me, towards the 30%. But of course, you can't use it for something personal because that comes down from the federal statutes. So hopefully one of those two answers matched it, Jolene, but don't hesitate if it didn't. Okay, good.
Okay.
Good to answer it. Great.
Well, I will give y'all back your 15 minutes. Oh, here, one more question. Can we use some of the funding to purchase a new van for the center?
Yes. And that's an easy one. Yes. And we also had the question of, does it have to be a van? Because somebody was saying like a 7-seater. Absolutely, that's fine. Again, just as I was just saying, if you have personal and business use mixed, allocated as you would for the IRS. So whether that's using mileage or actual expenses, you'll want to do it that way and make sure that it's recorded. Business coaches can help you with this too. So I don't want to make it sound like you're all on your own and going to say, how do I figure this out using form 8829? I think it is. Talk to a business coach. We can help you with it.
And the link for how to sign up for a business coach is in the chat as well. And we'll be sure to add that in our follow-up email. So y'all will be able to follow up with that. Because I know sometimes getting something out of the chat can be a challenge. So thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your afternoon.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye.